Welcome back to Conscious Connection, the podcast where we explore the power of your inner guidance system, how to trust it, follow it, and use it to create a life that feels like home. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce a guest whose work lives at the intersection of creativity, purpose, and authenticity. Franklin Rivera is the founder of ARP Visuals, a visionary media company known for telling real stories with real heart. Whether he's behind the camera or building powerful brand narratives, Franklin brings a rare blend of creative intuition and grounded faith to everything he does. In this episode, we'll dive into how Franklin uses his inner compass to navigate the world of visual storytelling, why staying true to your purpose matters in a digital age, and what it means to build a life and a business guided from within. So if you've ever wondered how creativity and clarity work together, or how to stay aligned while building something impactful, this episode is for you. Let's get started. So, good morning, Franklin.
Morning.
Thanks for being here. I watched your video, Authentic Storytelling is Paramount in Marketing, and it stayed with me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you invited us to skip the typical intros and instead show people who we really are. You shared that you're a West Point graduate who led 45 men through war and brought them all home safely. Then you took us to a very different battlefield, being on government assistance after coming from a, your words, stupid rich family. Unless I misinterpreted that.
No, you're right.
And then
You're
you
right.
asked something that hit me hard. After hearing those stories, do you think I'm capable of helping you grow your business and bringing you home safely?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so let's begin there.
Okay. That's funny. And when you do these videos or write these articles, you really don't know who's going to be reading them or when they're going to be reading them. But that actually came across when I had started my business not my business. I was working as a financial advisor. And I was looking at a way to introduce myself when I went to networking events. And, when you go to a lot of networking events, there's always a bunch of realtors in the room. There's always a bunch of financial advisors in the room. And everybody always says, hey, I'm so-and-so with, Merrill Lynch. I'm so-and-so with Morgan Stanley. And I just didn't want to be another person who says, I'm just another financial advisor. So something said, you know what, why don't you tell who you are first and your story and then finish it up with, and I'm a financial advisor with so-and-so. So it's funny. I was in this room. I remember it was a Japanese restaurant. I remember exactly where it was. It was in Aurora, Illinois. And it was my turn to introduce myself. There's a big circle of us there. And I told my story, exactly what you just said. And amazing. That was the first time I actually had people come up and ask me for my business card because they felt that they really connected with me when I said that. But I think at the root of it was I actually meant it. I actually meant what I said. So it's funny that you bring that up.
Yeah, so you were authentic. You were coming from your heart.
Right.
And people could feel that.
Yes.
Right? Well, I brought it up because I'm a realtor. So I go to networking events and I really don't even like telling people I'm a realtor because I see them like put their hands up like, go away. And interestingly enough, last week, I was at a sailboat event for Save Our Souls, which is a friend of mine owns some sailboats at Dolphin Landings. And every Sunday morning, he takes out cancer patients and seriously ill patients physically and mentally for a sailboat ride and their caregivers. And this was a fundraiser for his charity. And I met this woman on the dock and she said, what do you do? And I said, I sell real estate. I kind of said it like, I sell real estate. I said, but really I'm a speaker and an author and a podcast host. And that got her excited. And she said, oh, what do you speak about? I said, oh, I have my most recent title is I'm tired of pretending I'm fine.
Oh, wow.
And that's what she said. Oh, wow. Well, we just met yesterday for coffee, and she's my first client.
Wow.
And that's because I got past I'm a realtor and talked about who I am other than a realtor. And I am a real estate agent. I love helping people buy and sell homes. It isn't my purpose in life. So I told her what my purpose is. And now we're friends and she's a client. And so thank you. Your story that I don't know when you wrote that inspired me to just feel free to talk about who I am, not what I do.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I think that's so important because we go to so many events, especially as a business owner, and they always ask, the first question is always what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do doesn't really define who we are. And I think once we get down to the foundation of a person's purpose, it makes you more willing to either do business with them or, really want to connect with them. And I think at the root of everything, I'm a big faith-based guy, and I truly believe that all of my steps are ordered. It'd be funny if some of the things I did took God by surprise. Like, hey, I didn't know that was going to happen, Frank. So, I feel that when people know who you are and what you've been through and what your purpose is, at the foundation, I think it really is we want to help people. And when you start with that, the business will just come. And if you look at, a lot of people that are faith-based, that's really what it's about. It's about uplifting others and helping to guide them towards, their success, whether it's in business or whether it's just in life or whether it's just for that day.
Right.
Yeah,
right. We're here to serve one another.
Exactly.
A friend of mine says we're really all just walking each other home.
I like that.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful?
Yeah,
we're
I like that.
All just walking each other home. And so for me, I'm a faith-based person too. I don't think people have to have a strong faith to be that kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
It's just for you and I, that's where our foundation is. And that in itself gives me comfort. It gives me purpose. It gives me guidance. More than anything, it gives me guidance because I've learned to rely on not just the actual word of God in the Bible or spoken in a church or something like that or heard as a scripture, but the word of God in my ear. And that's my inner guidance, and that's your inner guidance, and we all have it.
Right.
What I'd like to talk about with you now is that word in your ear and the story of your son and moving your whole business down here from, was it Minnesota?
Illinois.
Yes. So tell us about that.
So, really, we had been, it was funny. My wife was born in Chicago. We met in St. Petersburg, actually, when I was in the pharmaceutical industry. And then I got a job up there in Illinois. So I moved up there. We weren't married yet. We dated long distance for 3 years. Saw each other once every 3 months. And I dragged her back up there to where she was from. But funny enough, all of our family had followed us to Florida. So now we were the only ones up there in Illinois, and all our families down. So we've been talking about going back for a while. But I think, some things really started to accelerate that process. And we have an older son. He's 26. He was bullied when he was young. And I think you always learn with your first child, certain things you might do a little bit differently. And our second one started to be bullied at his school, and he's a creative person. So, actually St. Pete is perfect for creative people. But he was a creative person, and he was, I think, more advanced than a lot of his classmates. He taught himself Japanese. He made a Japanese dictionary. He taught himself piano. Yeah. Don't ask me how. But
Wait, I can get that he taught himself Japanese, but he made himself a Japanese dictionary.
Yes.
Okay, so he's a little bit on the brilliant side.
I'd like to think so, not just the parent.
Okay.
And this is like when he was 10 or 11. He taught himself piano. He taught himself coding. He started to hire people and pay them in Robux, which is a popular game on a computer. He would hire developers from Discord and have them help him build. And this is all like when he was 12 years old. So he was always kind of more advanced and didn't really fit in. You know, he loves theater, he loves acting, he loves singing, but he got bullied, and it got really bad to the point of we had to start bringing our attorneys in because it even got to the administrative level at the school he was at, where they were, questioning him without parents being present. It was just really horrible. And I think what it really hit home is when he said, I do not want to go to this high school next year. I just can't. I just can't. And when you start to think as a parent that you're going to, if you ignore these signs,
Right.
what could happen? And at that point, our parents were getting older. We said, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just pick up and move. And that's hard when you've built a business, you've built connections.
Yes.
I had, besides my ARP visuals, I was also a head track coach at the high school. So I gave that up. The athletes were extremely sad. I was crying at the going away. I gave up all of my private track and field clients, and we just, started selling everything in the house. Had no idea. Well, we knew where we were going to move, but we knew this house was like 75% smaller than the one we were currently living in Illinois. So we had to sell a lot of stuff. We left a lot of our dining room furniture and everything, sold it with the house, and just moved. And that was hard. That was hard, giving up my business up there, and then on top of that, deciding to start a new one. But
A completely different business?
so this was not completely different. So I had a marketing agency up north that was, very successful, but video was always a part of our marketing. So I decided I want to go back to what I love and just do video. I just want to have a deliverable. I just want to do video, get back into the creative part. So that's when I started that in November. And we actually moved to Florida right before Hurricane Milton.
Oh, wonderful.
So, yeah. So you had Milton, you had the holidays, you're starting a new. So it was very difficult with no money coming in. But the thing is, we had been there before when I first started my business, and I always like to look at what you've gotten through, not what you're going through. Because too often we look at the struggles we're currently going through and we totally ignore the fact that we've already gotten through so many difficult things we never thought we were going to get through back then when we were going through them.
Right.
So we knew.
And that gives us the groundwork to know we can do it again.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks different, but it's the same.
The same.
Right.
The same.
Right.
So, so we made the move, and it was very hard. My wife had to actually go back up to Illinois by herself because I had to take care of our youngest down here and finish clearing out the house. We probably 17 years in a house. You have a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Not to mention, all the Facebook Marketplace shopping. So that tends to build things up. She got ill. It was bad. It was really bad. But the bright side is our son down here is now a honor roll, straight A's. He was C's and D's. He got a lead role in the play. And the other day I pick him up and he's like crying. And I'm like, what's happening, dude? You should be happy. He's like, Dad, I am. I can't believe people are being this nice to me.
Oh.
It's hard for me to talk about this because I'm a pretty sensitive guy. I blame it on all the Hallmark movies my wife watches. So I don't want to get all teary-eyed.
That's okay. They can't see you cry.
But yeah, he's just been a whole nother person. So when you look at that as a parent, you realize, this is what you live for.
Yes.
It's not about you. It's about, I always get my quotes from like these hip hop songs. And one of my favorite quotes is, why live in complacency when you can leave a legacy?
Beautiful.
So I think about
Beautiful.
that. So.
And did I see that he's at St. Pete High?
Yes.
Well, that's why it's so wonderful. That's my alma mater. And,
all right.
And, it's the only high school. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I would offend people if I said that. But St. Pete High is pretty special.
It is a great school.
And I saw the pictures and the auditorium. And I recently had, it's hard to believe, but I recently had my 50-year reunion. And,
wow.
And I went back, and the auditorium was one of my favorite places to experience the energy of and be in again. that tour of the school 50 years later for me was the best part of my high school reunion. Loved seeing the people, of course,
Right.
but being in the school and going to the archives section and looking back at our class and class of 73, and yeah, it was amazing. So, and being a parent now, my people say to me, "What's your greatest accomplishment?" Well, it's being a mom,
Hmm.
bar none.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't trade it for anything. Now, there are days I would have, but looking back and on the whole of it, I wouldn't trade it for anything. So, whenever I hear that parent sacrifice story, I understand it. I would take a bullet for my children.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't take a bullet for anyone else in this world, even my
yeah.
grandchildren. I hope they're not listening. But I would not hesitate to take a bullet for both of my boys. So I get that. And it really moved me. So you moved down here. You had to start all over. You'd done
Right.
it before, so you knew you could live through it. It wasn't easy, I'm sure.
No.
Right? And you are creative.
Yes.
You mentioned in your story that St. Pete is a great place for your son and you and anyone to be a creative. And I never looked at St. Pete like that. I've lived here my whole life, and of course I enjoy the culture and the arts and those kind of things, but it never dawned on me that this is the perfect place to be a creative.
Oh, gosh, yes. And like I said, we moved away from here like 20 years ago, and it's completely different now. And I can compare what it was like up north in Illinois compared to being down here. And the level of support, I feel like I've been here forever. Just from the groups that I've joined. I mean, just sitting here in this podcast, what took me 8 years to build up there has happened in like 6 months
Oh, good.
down here.
Good.
And it is because I think of the creativity. And I also think with St. Pete being such an inclusive community, it makes it that much easier for people to be who they truly are. I find that very, very uplifting. Very uplifting, yeah.
Yes, that's good. And it wasn't always that way. I mean, I grew up here, and trust me, it was not a super inclusive community. And I'm so glad that it hasn't evolved into that.
Yeah.
And people embrace that. So one of my questions I have for you is, how does your inner guidance manifest during the creative process? And are there specific practices you follow to stay connected to it?
Yes. First and foremost, every morning, without hesitation, I have to pray. I just have to. And it's weird because a lot of people will look at people that pray or it's faith-based as, especially if you haven't experienced it. If you haven't experienced it, it's hard to explain. I've seen what life is without that. I've seen what going through a day without starting off with prayer and positive affirmations. With so much coming at you, you need something that that's going to keep you grounded for the rest of the day. You have to remember those things that, I read about in the Bible, that, you're above and not beneath, that you are, all your needs are supplied according to his riches and glory. All of those things, you have to be able to internalize that, because I think what that does also is it sets the framework or the groundwork for how you deal with other people out there with your business. So, one of the most powerful words or scriptures, and I don't remember numbers of scripture, I just know what they say, is, do everything with excellence as unto God. So if I'm taking on a project and I'm not going to do it excellent for that person, I'm not satisfying God in that way, and it's become such a part of me that if I can go above and beyond with what I'm doing in my creative process, and I thank him for wiring my mind that way, they're going to be satisfied. I'm helping them reach a milestone in their lives or in their businesses. And I've done my part. I've done that leaving a legacy part. if that makes sense.
Sure.
So I always start my day off with prayer because it really keeps me grounded, because otherwise, we're not living in our dream home. We often laugh that if we picked up our home and moved it down here, it'd be worth a lot of money. It would be a lot of money. We're in a house, that's, a fourth of the size of what we moved. We're falling over each other. My wife is like, we got to sell our TVs. We can't even hang them up on the walls. But with all of that coming at me and trying to build a new business, if I don't have something that's going to ground me and guide me for that day, it's going to overwhelm me and I'm going to want to give up. And I just can't. I can't give up for my family. I can't give up for my, my children. I can't give up for that legacy that I want to leave, not just for us, but for the people that I work with. So I hope I answered your question.
You
right?
did. I'd like to know how you use your inner guidance system for your creative process. So when you're making your videos, when you're editing your videos, whatever it is you're doing with that, or when you're marketing your business.
Oh, okay.
How do you tap in?
I do.
And what does that look like?
Okay.
And I don't know if you can even describe it, but if you can, let us know.
I'll do my best. It's hard. So I think at the root of it, when I make there's different ways for filmmakers to make films. A lot of times one thing that a lot of people do is they storyboard exactly the beginning and the end. And they have every single scene, angles, camera types, lighting, all of that figured out. I build mine scene by scene. I've tried to storyboard everything out. I know where I'm starting. I have no idea where I'm going to end. But as I listen either to a song or I listen to an audio where I'm creating an AI film for like a testimonial or something, I listen over and over and over again for several days, sometimes weeks, because every time I listen to it, I get a different vision in my head. So I never go with the first thing that pops into my head. And then when I get stuck, I'll stop. And usually in the weirdest places, probably whether taking a shower or, first thing when I wake up in the morning, it comes to me. And I truly believe that that's my inner guidance system saying, this is what you need to do next. And because of that, I've been able to create some really so somebody told me the other day I had to do a testimonial short film using all AI. And they came back to me and said, do you know that the woman that gave the testimony, the person you created with AI almost looks exactly like her and has the same mannerisms? I had no idea what she looked like.
Oh, my.
I had no idea. No idea. And out of all the characters I created, why did I pick that one? It just felt right. So that's how I use my inner guidance system. And I think that's what enables me to create things that a lot of people just cannot fathom or create or just see, So that's how I use it in creative process. So that's why sometimes, I remember a 6-minute video took me 2.5 months to finish and over 1,000 images. And that was because I always am listening into what should I pick? What should I do next? Very long process, but it's worth it.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Here's a fact. The longer a website takes to load, the lower its conversion rate is. What you probably don't know is that a 1-second delay in a page load can result in a 7% reduction in conversions. And if you reduce a page load time by just 100 milliseconds, it results in over a 1% increase in conversions. Improving website speeds directly impacts lead gen, rankings, and overall sales. Are you complaining about your website's performance? Contact Neiman Creative today at info@neimancreative.com or visit our website at neimancreative.com to learn how we make sure our clients' websites are running smooth.
Welcome back. Yeah, well, so you've taught yourself, or maybe it came naturally, I don't know, but probably through time, you've learned to trust.
Yes.
That tapping into an energy and a vision so much greater.
Oh, yeah.
Than you and I could our finite minds, even if I feel like my mind is unlimited, it's still only as big as I'll allow it to be, right?
Right.
So when you tap in to your inner guidance system, you're tapping into that universal mind.
Oh, yeah.
And that universal mind and the heavenly mind
Yes.
is so creative and spot on. So it created an AI image. I mean, that's very cool.
Yeah. It blew me away when she told me that. I was like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. Because the way they described them at first, I actually did the total opposite. I asked for the skin tone and the hair type, and I went with something opposite, and it ended up being closer than what they had. I can't explain
No,
it.
well, that's the beauty for me. The mystery of it is part of the beauty of it. For me, some people are much more scientific based and want to know why and want the answer. And I don't need any of that, fortunately, because my left side of the brain's kind of asleep, and that's okay. So wonderful. So you use it in your creative process. You have a daily ritual that you do.
Right.
I want to make sure people understand that praying doesn't mean that you're sitting there, could mean that you're sitting there reciting the Lord's Prayer, but it could also mean that you're just having a conversation with God.
Exactly.
And my definition of prayer is a conversation. And I actually am learning that every thought I have is a prayer. Every word that comes out of my mouth is a prayer, because all of that is the energy I'm putting out into the world, and that's creating the reality that I see. So I just want to make sure people understand that it could be that you're sitting there saying the Lord's Prayer, and absolutely nothing wrong with that, but it also could be.
Right.
I don't know if you ever read Neil Donald Walsh's book, Conversations with God.
I've heard of it, but
It's a great book. Highly recommend it. But that's what it sounds like you do.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I do. When I have my coffee with God every morning, then I'm reading
and all day long, too.
Yeah, yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Especially when I get stuck, or, when I feel like I've done something that could have been done better. And instead of beating myself up, I can stop and say, okay, what would have been better for me to do?
Right.
So that's beautiful. Thank you. Can you discuss a project where your visual storytelling significantly impacted someone's understanding of their own purpose or inner journey?
Wow.
Yes. Kind of hit you out of the blue with that one.
That is.
So the project you were doing through film helped someone understand their own purpose in life.
Yeah, I can. And this is kind of funny, because I just had this conversation with this gentleman the other day. He was the executive director of a nonprofit that my agency was helping to market. And they were having this huge gala, and they were looking at somebody to record their video. And mind you, this is when I was with my agency. So, I had video cameras, but I wasn't doing it to the level of, make a long story short, they chose me to record their video instead of this local TV station. And I did the entire video off of my phone. And it was telling the story of the executive director and why he was doing what he was doing. And a lot of the B-roll was showing, the children that, they had found homes for, and the staff that worked there. And I remember filming him, and he's standing there looking at all the pictures on the wall. And he came back to, how it impacts his family and how he wants to be the same thing to his family as he is to this nonprofit. And I think when he looked at the final video and they showed it in front of a room of like 1,000 people, and nobody had any idea it was entirely done on a phone. I think it really hit him hard, because you can work at a place and, go through our emotions, but you get so wrapped up in the job that when you sit back and you hear your own story and narrative and then see the visuals behind it, it really hits home to what your purpose is.
And the impact you're having.
The impact you're having, And I remember one guy, I did somebody else from the same one, I did a separate one, and he was talking about how he helped this kid and everything, and then they got home and he became a victim of mistaken identity and got shot, and died. And that really hit him hard in having to relive that. But then seeing the entire narrative of all the good that has happened from what he's done and why he left corporate America to do what he did, I think it really cemented his purpose even more. So when I'm able to provide those visuals to people, even like recently I did one about the loss of a family pet. There's this great song about losing a family pet. I put a video together. And it just resonated with people how these are family members. And here's someone that lost somebody, lost a pet, myself, relating to me and how they relate to their pets and what they mean to them. So sometimes my mind thinks faster than my mouth can talk.
I understand.
So,
and it's so interesting that you hesitated when I asked the question, like, oh, have I? Huh.
Yeah.
And then, boom, 3 stories come out. It's great, because indeed you have, and there's probably many more people that have been impacted. What I love about life is that I can say something and it can truly impact another person's entire perspective or life or marriage or relationship with God or whatever that is. And I don't even know I've done it. I never get told. Oh, by the way, that statement you made really had an impact on me. And I know it happened for me when I was in my early 30s. I was sitting at my desk at a bank. I was in the mortgage business, and I worked for a local bank. And this gentleman, David Ray, who I really enjoyed working with and hopefully he's still around, liked very much. He came into my office, and he was telling us his story. And he said, when I was about 19, I was spiritually bankrupt. And he went on to tell his story. And those 2 words, spiritually bankrupt, went straight to my heart.
Wow.
And I stopped. And I took a breath and I said, oh my God, I'm spiritually bankrupt.
Wow.
Now, he didn't know that he had affected me that way until, maybe 20 years later. Yeah, in my 50s, I worked with him again at another bank, and I told him that. And he doesn't even remember the conversation.
Wow.
And I said, you started my journey, because I was raised in a religion that I won't mention, but I didn't care for, and I left and just had gone wayward. And I said, you started my journey back to God. You started my journey to seek out my spiritual life again. And he had no idea. So I just love that, and I think it's important that we all are reminded that our words are powerful, not just for ourselves, but for other people.
Yep.
And it sounds like, and I'm a very visual person, so videos and things really impact me as well. And I'm glad you're able to do that for people as well. Okay, so here's one question about overcoming challenges.
Wow.
So reflecting on your journey, what challenges have tested your connection to your inner guidance, and how did you overcome them?
Wow. Well, my challenges started very young, and I think it became more or less a training. I don't want to say it wasn't formal training, but it was going through several difficult times, coming out of them, and realizing that I was going to get out of every difficult thing because of my faith. And faith isn't easy. So,
and how is your faith going to get you out of every difficult time?
First thing that comes to mind is when I was young, and my grandfather, I must have been about 10, maybe. My grandfather bought me this expensive bicycle. It was a Raleigh bicycle back then. It was like $300, which was ridiculously expensive. And that bicycle was stolen. And I remember running home, getting on my knees and praying for my bicycle to come back. And no joke, 2 hours later, the police call and say, we found your bicycle just abandoned in the middle of a field, totally intact. And I'm sitting there going, are you kidding me? Who would just drop a perfectly new bicycle? And that was the beginning of it. And I started to pray for a lot of things. And it just, every single time, things just worked out. And I remember, and I think you and I had spoken about this, when I had started my company. And, you know, I had to buy a couple cars because I was laid off from pharmaceuticals. I basically put all my money into the company, so much so that we couldn't pay our mortgage. It was hard. It was very, very hard. And we were going to, my wife, much to my, resistance, said, hey, we put a lot of money into this government system, so let's get our money back and apply for, food stamps and stuff. And I remember she would send me to Walmart to pick up some things. And I remember how badly I was treated simply because I was using food stamps. And I'm sitting there going, nobody has any idea of my education, what I've done, but simply because I'm just being treated badly. And it got to the point we were trying to find a place to move, and we had 2 weeks left before we were going to basically be kicked out of our home. Didn't know where we were going to go. And I remember the bank calling and saying, you know what, Mr. Rivera, we can work with you. And that was 2013. And I never looked back.
Oh, I read that on LinkedIn or one of your, yes.
And I'm thinking, I've always heard, if you look at a lot of biblical references, a lot of things always happen at the midnight hour.
11th hour.
The 11th hour.
And that's so you can have faith.
Exactly. Exactly. And when that happened, we're sitting there going, what the? Yeah. So whenever my family goes through something, we always go back to that. And we're like, look at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
Just yesterday, I was telling my wife, I said, man, I need some more, recurring business to come in. And all of a sudden I get this notice from somebody from Minnesota that says, hey, I'm flying down to Tampa to visit my dad. I need some private coaching for track and field. I'm going, Minnesota? So I just know that every single challenge that was going to happen, you're going to get through it. And that faith isn't because of what actions you take. Because a lot of times we want to help God out, with our own actions. Faith is saying, I'm glad you're here with me. You're going through this with me. I don't know how, but you're going to find a way out. I don't know how. So I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm just going to go live in it. Day as normal.
That's right.
And it always works out.
Mm-hmm.
Always. I just wish more people could understand that.
For I know the plans I have for you.
Oh my gosh.
Plans to prosper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing takes them by surprise. Like, oh my gosh, Frank, I didn't see that one coming. We'd be in a lot of trouble if that was the case.
Well, my pastor, spiritual leader, Dr. Pulley, who also has a podcast on this program, he reminds me that nothing is a surprise to God for the whole world. So what's going on in our world today, everybody's all freaked out about, right? Not everybody, but people get, and myself included, if I stop and watch the news, which I don't do very often, or read the news, I can get pretty worked up and get into fear.
Right.
And Dr. Pulley reminds me, none of this is a surprise to God. This is exactly what is supposed to happen, and only good can come from it. Well, it sure doesn't feel like it now. And it's like, just keep doing your spiritual practices, Carol. Just keep getting still and asking for the answers, and you'll get what you need. And then you can provide that to other people, and they'll get what they need. And it's all going to work out. So he's over in Africa right now, and I help him in the mornings on his program called The Daily Download live on Facebook. And I said to him, it's amazing how happy the people are there in Africa, because I'm guessing they don't have very much materially. And he said, yeah. And he said, guess what? And their government doesn't provide for them. I said, oh, I'm kind of feeling like that might be the case starting over here. And he said, yeah, they're telling me now you can depend on God more.
I love it.
I know. Isn't that beautiful?
I love it.
Because they were so full of godly love. When he landed on his plane and got off they were amazingly positive, thankful, grateful people with very little. I mean, if they make $200 a month, right? That's a lot.
Right.
So anyway, nothing is a surprise for God.
No.
All right, we're going to wrap up. It has been such a pleasure to have you on
Thank
the
you.
show.
Thanks
And
for
I'd
having
like
me.
for you to tell everybody how they can reach you and what your full name and website and all that good stuff is.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
my full name is Franklin D. Rivera II. And my website is ARP. So I'll do it in the Army phonetics. Alpha Romeo Papa Visuals.com. So ARPvisuals.com. And number is 727-371-6334. Or you can email me at frank@arpvisuals.com.
Wonderful. And I had the good fortune of having Franklin help me with my first video for my first speaking event, most recent speaking event here. And he just did a beautiful job.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I highly encourage you, if you have any visual video needs, to give Franklin a call and chat with him, and even just to connect. So if Franklin's story lit something up in you, take a moment today to pause and ask, what's my inner guidance trying to tell me right now? Sometimes the next right step isn't loud, but it's always true. And until next time, trust yourself, listen closely, and move forward with purpose. See you next time.